I'm Louise, and today I'm going to be talking about my review of Megalopolis. I did not expect to be recording this. I kind of went into the movie just expecting to write a quick tweet about it, but I was like, there's so much I have to say, so I might as well just film a review. And I have been spending some time just writing some notes down. I didn't really write a review for this because, other reviews I will write out everything. And this one I was like, I'll kind of go off the cuff. Turns out that's kind of how they film the movie, so that feels appropriate here. For those of you that don't know, Megalopolis is basically Francis Ford Coppola's trying to be his magnum opus, basically. He's been working on this thing for a long, long, long time and finally has been able to make it, and we're all getting to see it. It's all him. I can't imagine him. I know a lot of directors will be like, the studio intervened, which happens, to be fair. That is not the case here. This is all him. And if you don't know, Francis Ford Coppola is really famous for directing movies like Apocalypse Now, The Godfather Part 2. My favorite of his is The Conversation. I feel like it gets talked about less. It's my favorite of his films. The other ones, they're not really my cup of tea, but I can see why people like them so much and why they made such an impact on the film industry, specifically in sound, which is more Walter Murch, but that's a side thing. Anyway, my husband's a sound designer, so I'm always thinking about sound stuff. And Francis Ford Coppola has genuinely been trying to make this movie, it sounds like, since he directed Apocalypse Now. Like, reportedly, Lawrence Fishburne was saying that on set he was talking about this movie, and that was the mid-70s. So this movie has been in the works, I guess, just in production at various stages for like 50 years almost. Which is funny to me because I keep reading that it sounds like there was a lot of improv from the cast. You would think if you'd been planning a movie for 50 years that you would have it more together than that, and he'd spent a lot of time like in his trailer just thinking to himself and stewing on the movie and whatever. It's a miracle the movie makes much sense as it does, even though I know for a lot of people it's really strange and it is weird, but I went into it expecting something way more weird based on what I heard about it. Like, it is strange, obviously. I thought it was going to be more experimental after hearing about it from people, and it is somewhat experimental in the acting choices and some of the directing choices, but it's still like a movie. You still get like your introduction to all your characters, and then the second act, which is kind of a lot. There's a lot going on in the second act, and then the third act just kind of ends really fast. So if you're expecting like a really experimental movie, this is not really that. It just feels kind of bloated, and some of the choices were just strange. There's still music in it. There's some cool stuff happening with the cinematography. I loved the costumes actually a lot. I thought they were really fun and kind of Roman-y but modern, and I liked that. It's hard to say it's basically anything. There's a lot going on here. A lot of the acting choices were kind of wild, but they didn't feel out of place for what the tone of the movie was. It's hard to talk about this movie without sounding a little crazy because there's just a lot happening. Like, I would describe this movie as, to me, it felt like when I was watching Elvis. Elvis, I felt like, was throwing so much at me all the time, especially at the beginning. I don't know if you guys remember that opening scene. It just feels like bam, 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 bam. And this feels like that, but the whole time. And it's a lot. Like, they're throwing concepts and stuff at you, and I know it's trying to be really heavy-handed about its messaging, but the message didn't get quite communicated, I don't think. Didn't get quite handed to me. I don't think any of the actors were like bad. I know they're all good. What was Dustin Hoffman doing there? He really just was in it for like 5 minutes to say a couple lines and then get out of there. I just, I feel like his character could have been taken out and it wouldn't have made a difference. To me, it feels like there's another cut of this movie somewhere with like parts of the story that have been missing. But that's not possible because there's no studio that would have changed this. It was all Francis. It was all him. I will say this. I was never bored. Like, say what you will about this movie. It's a little crazy, it's a little strange, but I was entertained the whole time. Either I was feeling kind of confused and trying to figure out what was going on, or I was baffled. There's a lot of feeling baffled for me during this movie. The showing I went to had probably, I don't see anyone over the age of like 35 in our showing. Everybody was around my age and younger or a little bit older, I don't know, in their 20s or early 30s. And at a certain point, probably about an hour and a half in, we just, as a group, decided that we could laugh at whatever we wanted. Because I think the first hour and a half, we were all just kind of acclimating to what was going on. And then when we finally realized that, like, yeah, this is how the whole movie's going to be, people would just start laughing at stuff that wasn't supposed to be funny, but came across that way. And it was really fun. I love going to the theater and kind of experiencing the movie with everyone. And this was a really fun one to see in a full theater. It was full. To be fair, though, it wasn't a huge theater and it was like a discounted day, but it was packed. It was just full. Every row, almost every seat was taken, which I was kind of surprised by. I thought it might just be me and my husband and then the people behind us who bought tickets before us. And after it was over, hearing everybody talk about it was really funny too, because they're all like, what was that? We all just collectively had this kind of strange experience. So the cast is like really stacked. I guess if I were an actor, I'd be like, yeah, I'll work with Francis Ford Coppola, even though he's kind of weird and I don't know what this movie is. I know a lot of people on Twitter have been saying, like, what is Adam Driver doing with his career? To me, I can totally see where he's coming from. He's gotten to work with Francis Ford Coppola and Ridley Scott, and I thought Annette was fun. I don't even remember who directed that. Anyway, he's just had a really interesting last few years, and everybody's like, what is he thinking? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, as an actor, you're not always doing projects based on what if you think they'll be successful. He has his Disney money and now can just do whatever he wants. And I think that would be the way to do it, honestly. If I were in his exact situation. Adam Driver's the lead. He feels like a self-insert for Francis Ford Coppola to me. And I'm honestly not entirely sure what he's supposed to represent. Everybody else has a pretty clear role of what they're supposed to be, but he's like this really wealthy guy that's trying to build Megalopolis. That's his whole thing, and he's like, we need to build a futuristic town and we need everybody to participate, and he's trying to build a utopia essentially, but can also stop time. I don't know why he does that or why it matters. Because he only does it like a couple times, but it doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on. It's almost like, again, it's a side plot that had more importance, but there's still parts of it left sprinkled in. Because sometimes you can tell when storylines been messed with, because you'll see parts of something and you're like, I can kind of see a vague picture of what's going on here, but I feel like we're missing pieces. And that's what that in particular felt like to me. Giancarlo Esposito is the mayor, and his role seems pretty clear to me. He's supposed to be, you know, each character, because it's supposed to be a fable. This story is supposed to be a fable. And so everybody's role is essentially like they're supposed to represent a certain thing. Giancarlo's is like the government, is what he's supposed to represent. And then you have like John Voight? I don't know how to say his name. He is like the ultra wealthy class. And then you have like Aubrey Plaza playing this character named Wow Platinum. Yes, that really is her name. And they even talk about it in the movie. They're like, where did you get your name from? And she's like, well, I saw it in New York City or something. So it's not her for real name, I guess, but we don't ever find out what her other name is. Anyway, she's supposed to represent the media because she's a news anchor. And then eventually she gets married to John I don't know. John. Well, his character's name is Hamilton Crassus the Third, and she eventually marries him and tries to take over. And Lawrence Fishburne is interesting. He's in this too, and he plays Adam Driver's driver. That's so stupid. And he's also the narrator, and so maybe his place is supposed to be like he's observing all this happen and is telling this story later to someone, to us. And then we've got like side characters like Dustin Hoffman, who was around. There's this whole sequence where Grace VanderWaal, the singer, I don't know if you guys know her, but she's a singer and is a teen pop star that is supposedly a virgin, and that's really important for some reason. So she's also representative of like young pop stars, I guess, and how they kind of get torn apart by the media, which feels very applicable for the last couple months or just forever. That's been happening to female pop stars forever. So I will say he did get that kind of right. Shia LaBeouf was really interesting. He feels like you're kind of annoying cousin that you don't really like hanging out with, and he just kind of schemes to be in government somehow. And he does it by like saying power to the people and blah blah blah. But he obviously doesn't believe it. He's still part of like the upper wealthy class. He says that he's supposed to be the comedic relief, and he is that. And he schemes with Aubrey Plaza. They're funny together, actually. That side plot was probably the most cohesive and the most interesting. Because the stuff with Adam Driver and Nathalie, is that how you say her name? Anyway, she's beautiful in this movie. I could see why Adam Driver and a Driver's character was interested in her. She's also the daughter of the mayor, which makes conflict because Adam Driver and Giancarlo Esposito like butt heads and are enemies, and so she's kind of conflicted about that. Would I recommend this movie? I don't know. I would say I think it's worth seeing in a theater if it interests you at all. If you've heard me talking about this and you're like, what? That doesn't interest me even a little bit. Don't worry about it. Like, just, it's not gonna be a cultural touchstone of any kind. It is kind of a fascinating exercise in seeing a director kind of do whatever, but I don't think it's necessary viewing. It's just so all over the place, and it might seem more strange to most people. I don't know. I was expecting it to be way weirder. And I was like, yeah, this still feels like a movie. Like, it is kind of weird, but it's still a movie. I think my new favorite trend is people just quoting the movie and trying to act like they do in the movie. Because out of context, it's so ridiculous. And even in context, it's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, would I recommend it? It depends. If you can go to a cheap showing with a bunch of people, do it. I had a really fun time. I was thoroughly entertained and thoroughly baffled. So if that sounds like a good time to you, then go ahead. And that's my review. I never know how to end these, but that's all I have to say about that. He plays Adam's drivers. Adam's Adam's drivers. Adam's. Oh my gosh. Adam Driver's driver.